to order. Just going to check to make sure that our IT capability is at par.
Test, test, test. This is the February 3rd Board of Police Commissioners live stream. And we have sound.
Great, thank you. Agenda item 3, approval of the minutes from the January 15th, 2025 meeting. Calls for a mover and a seconder. First off, are there any errors and omissions? Moved by Commissioner Hinch, seconded by Commissioner Kent. Call for the questions. All in favor? Contrary minded? The motion is carried. Agenda item 4, approval of the order of business.
Sorry, go ahead.
Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions from your end?
Chair Giles, there are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Commissioner Mancini?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to have information item 03 HRP biannual crime stats and info item 03 RCMP biannual crime stats added to the next Board of Police Commissioners agenda for discussion.
That's fine. So we wouldn't have any presentation or discussion this meeting. We'd have it deferred to the next meeting. Sure.
On that, I wouldn't mind a high-level presentation on those stats from both RCMP and HRP for as available for a presentation, and then so we can discuss. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I can see there's some value in that. Thank you. That change having been noted by Commissioner Mancini, do we have a mover and seconder for the current agenda, the order of business? Vice Chair O'Malley and Commissioner Mancini, call for the question. All in favor? Thank you. The motion's carried. Madam Clerk, is there business arising out of the minutes?
No, Chair Giles.
Agenda item 6, call for conflict of interest. I will now ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. Thank you. Agenda item 7, a consideration of deferred business. Madam Clerk?
There is no deferred business, Chair.
Item number 8, 8.1.1, correspondence. Madam Clerk, do we have correspondence been received?
Chair Giles, no correspondence was received for today's meeting.
And 8.2, petitions. Are there any petitions?
The clerk's office did not receive any petitions for this meeting.
Do any of the commissioners have any petitions to present? Agenda item 9, information items brought forward. Madam Clerk?
No information items, Chair.
Okay. Item 10, reports and discussions. 10.1, Halifax Regional Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police updates. First update, Chief McLean, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board, and everyone who's joining us today. Let me first start off by saying thank you for your kind comments before the start of the meeting. It's personally very well appreciated, and I thank you for them. At last month's meeting, a question was asked about our recruit class and how many repeat applicants there were that have applied the last time and applied this time. So I can answer that question today that we had 261 candidates who have applied to both competitions. So that remains ongoing, and we're in the middle of that process. And again, also our experienced police officer program remains open as well. I do believe I'm swearing someone in a couple weeks actually to join our organization. From an incident perspective, I'll touch on a few things. January was a very tragic month in many regards. In terms of, I just want to touch on a few things that applied to us. On January 19th at approximately 2:50 in the morning, officers responded to gunshots in North End Dartmouth in the area of Leahy and Catherine Street. Located 2 people suffering from gunshot wounds, subsequently a 30-year-old man and a 48-year-old woman were both transported to the hospital. Tragically, the man's injuries took his life. Our thoughts are with the victim's loved ones at this difficult time. The investigation is ongoing. And again, I appeal to anyone who has information about this incident to reach out to our investigative team. As well, I want to acknowledge on the 22nd of January, acknowledge the Halifax Regional Police Explosive Disposal Unit that responded to the incident at the Bedford Institute of Oceanography. Working with the national CBRM team in Ottawa, they came up with a plan to remove what was the crystallized picric acid from that institution. Of course, if you're like me, you had no idea what picric acid was at that particular time, but apparently it's what caused the Halifax explosion. I just want to acknowledge their professionalism and their courage in terms of, because it was them from our FIS team who actually went into the building that neutralized the substance and made everything safe. And I just want that noted. As well, on the 23rd, I want to acknowledge the multi-agency response to the tragic accident which occurred in the harbor related to the member of the HMCS Montreal. There was an accident, Halifax Regional Police, Halifax Fire, the Coast Guard, obviously the Navy, as well as civilian pilot vessels that responded. And our thoughts are with the Navy and the family of the deceased naval member. In fact, today at noon, our members were alongside the mayor down at the harbor while he recognized members of the civilian pilot vessels that helped with that rescue. On the 27th, our police members, patrol members responded to a series of accidents in the area of Jubilee Road and Veterans Memorial Lane. A young lady, 21 years old, had her life taken from her when she was hit by a vehicle that had been involved in multiple accidents. Our police members were on scene pretty quickly. A 32-year-old male was subsequently charged and remains charged with impaired, dangerous driving causing death as a multitude of hit and run offenses. Again, our thoughts are with that family for that tragic and senseless accident which occurred. On the 29th was a very busy day. Overnight, a traffic stop by our patrol members in Dartmouth found a vehicle acting suspiciously, subsequently stopped a vehicle, located a handgun, quantity of illegal drugs. This is a significant amount of cash, related, no doubt related to the drug trade. 2 adults were charged in that particular offense. And as well, there was a critical incident command call out that day, which involved the members of the RCMP tactical squad and their tactical assault, tactical armored rescue vehicle in terms to a high-risk warrant application in which a quantity of drugs and a shotgun was located. Good work by all the members there. But not the highlight of the day, unfortunately, which happened to be obviously the incident everyone is aware of at the hospital. Approximately around 1 o'clock, a number of our members responded to a report of a person who had obtained a knife and stabbed and injured 3 people in the hospital, 1 critically. It was a very quick and professional response by our members that had the party in custody in a short amount of time. He subsequently, a 32-year-old male, was charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. And I also want to note that just over the weekend, our investigative teams, along with our team, took place in a search in the Bedford area, locating 2 handguns in relation to information related to weapons complaints. So a lot of good work, a lot of tragic incidents which occurred over the last month. February is distracted driving month, and we obviously want to remind motorists to keep their eyes on the road and stay alert and avoid distractions, particularly the amount of salt and darkness that occurs on your vehicles. It's something to be extra mindful of. And I will reiterate Chair Giles' comments around this is African Heritage Month. we will be flying the flag of African Heritage Month flag, and the theme Legacy and Action Celebrating Black Brilliance, beyond the living legacy of all Black Nova Scotians during this particular time. Thank you, and subject to any comments or questions.
Questions or comments for the chief, please, commissioners?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. No questions, but I just want to, for my colleagues and those listening at home, the Chief talked about 3 incidents that led in a death. And remembering that our officers, both our HRP and RCMP, see this on a regular basis. And when you hear me talk about mental health supports for our officers, remember the Chief's presentation just now. And then, in my opinion, there are gaps in our mental health for when it comes to our first responders. And I'll be referencing these incidents, and it's so sad that's happened in our community, and making sure that we're taking care of our first responders, and particularly our police officers. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there other comments or questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Superintendent Mitchell, I take it that you're standing in for Superintendent?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you.
I did. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair, and Commissioners, and those listening virtually. Superintendent Mosers sends his regrets for not being here today. He's at a senior, he and a senior HRP officer are attending the Canadian Chiefs of Police Public Safety Interoperability Workshop in Ontario with national level participation. This workshop is a unique opportunity for HRD and HRP to jointly review case studies on interoperability, challenges, and successes, leveraging next-gen AI and advanced situational awareness tools, including the concept of drones as first responders. I would also like to, on behalf of HRD, we are proud to acknowledge African Heritage Month and support the important initiatives that are taking place during February. Our condolences are also with our partners with Canadian Armed Forces with the tragic incident that occurred in the Bedford Basin. Our thoughts are with the family. I would also, on behalf of HRD, extend heartfelt congratulations to Mr. Bill Moore, being named the HRM's first Public Safety Commissioner. Congratulations, Bill. We all commit to continuing our collective and collaborative efforts in support of HRM public safety together in advancing the important recommendations outlined in HRM's police transformation study. HRM remains in very fine hands. On Friday, January 24th, you probably read or heard about vehicle versus pedestrian accident in the Porters Lake area. A serious incident response team have invoked their mandate in that investigation. They are being supported by the RCMP collision analysts and reconstruction services. All of our well wishes are extended to the victim and his family in that case. I want to take a minute to remind citizens out there listening about the scams and frauds that are occurring across HRM and across the province. In Tantallon, a victim reported that he was supposed to meet a police officer at the Tantallon detachment, from the Tantallon detachment, I should say, at a bank and give the officer $10,000 in gift cards. The victim received another phone call from an unknown male who alerted about fraudulent activity with the bank account. The victim was then put in touch with a so-called investigator. The investigator directed her to purchase gift cards and provide the fraudster with the card numbers and PINs. These scams are becoming much more and more creative and sophisticated. HRD would like to remind the public that the RCMP or any other police force would never contact anyone in such a manner. Currently, we're also seeing a continued uptick in the so-called grandparent frauds. In one case, the victim lost $5,000. In another, they lost $5,300. Our media section has been engaged, and these concerning incidents, which often have trans-provincial linkages, are being actively investigated by the Integrated Criminal Investigative Division. All of these incidents are unfortunate and concerning circumstances where fraudsters are preying on the compassion and kindness of the elderly population. Frauds of this nature continue to trend higher. Similar to this, we're advising the public of text messaging scams taking place across the regions where the public has been receiving unsolicited messages. Scammers are sending fictitious RCMP delivery notice messages, directing potential victims to a very convincing website portrayed to be the RCMP's. We remind the public that the RCMP does not issue such notices by text messages, and our national counterparts are intercepting these sophisticated websites. We'd also like, the chief spoke about the incident at QE2. Even though it's in HRP's jurisdiction, we would like to extend our condolences and our well wishes to the victims in that incident. This impacts a far-reaching community within HRM. Just this Saturday, our members attended a significant weapons complaint in the Musquodoboit Harbor area. Several callers reported gunshots and screaming. Multiple police resources directed to our residents, supported by the RCMP's Critical Incident Program. HRD contained the residents and subsequently conducted high-risk traffic stops, and 2 vehicles leaving the area were stopped. Subsequently, 2 adult males were arrested for a variety of firearms offenses. The residence was cleared and searched via judicial authorizations. I would like to point out the tremendous interoperability example and our gratitude to our partners at Halifax Regional Police, who temporarily pressed additional police resources to relieve call pressures in Cole Harbour and Lower Sackville while our resources were focused on this critical incident. And I'd like to take a minute to point out that this happens more commonly than you may think. Our partners don't ask if they can help us out, they just show up and they tell us they're there. So thanks to that, Chief. The RCMP Halifax Regional Detachment is thrilled to support Mr. Shinab Bhatnagar as he embarks on an incredible journey with the RCMP's diverse and inclusive pre-cadet experience program at our RCMP Training Academy in Depot this month. As part of our recruiting strategy, DICE is designed to remove barriers and empower racialized and underrepresented groups aspiring to join the RCMP. This program provides valuable training and ongoing support and guidance throughout the police officer application process. This opportunity has been made possible through the effective relationships built and maintained by HRD's Community Actions Response Team. We are so proud of Shinab and are eager to see what's next for him as a result of his experience. More information regarding the DICE program can be found on our RCMP Careers website. I'd also like to acknowledge a second how RCMP Integrated Watch Commander meeting took place just last week. These meetings continue to support the important momentum of HRM police transformation as we find areas to further harmonize, build relationships at the senior level, and to further integrate policing practices. And on a final note, we had the wonderful opportunity to attend a multi-government level community consultation in the community of Timberley just this past week at the Trinity United Church. Representatives from all levels of government, on the federal level, the Honorable Lena Metlich-Diab, at the provincial level, the Honorable Ian Rankin, and our newly appointed councillor, Ms. Janet Steele, attended. We had 50 participants from the community, and there was tremendous engagement, telling us about significant issues in their community like traffic complaints and stoplights and so on, but also signal positive support for an increased police presence out in the BLT area. Those would be my comments and updates, subject to any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm delighted with the portion of your presentation which relates to the interoperability, which simply materializes. That shows significant integration, and it can't help but be a good thing. I'm also pleased to receive your comments with respect to fraudulent activity, especially as they go out to the members of the public who are joining us online. Those are important reminders. And we're all potential victims. Even I was a potential victim last week when I got a call about a grandchild who had been imprisoned and was needing bail money. And I said to the caller, well, unless you know something that I don't know, you're wasting your time. Commissioners, any comments or questions for the superintendent, please? Thank you, Superintendent. Item 10.2.1, updated facility report. Speaker is Philip Duganzik.
So your notes are going to pop up here, and if you just want to progress, just press the space bar, and you can use these buttons to move back, of course.
this, just,
Like that will go back and that will go.
okay. And this is what's up on the screen?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Giles, Commissioners of the Board. My name is Philip Duganzik. I'm Director of Facilities Design and Construction with HRM. And I'm here today to present an update on the 2018 study and report on the plan for Halifax Regional Police Headquarters. I'll provide an overview and an update on the study and report. This is the motion made in 2023 requesting this report and presentation. Some time ago, HRP outgrew its headquarters on Gottingen Street, and has been, as a result of this, they've been required to disperse and distribute various functions and operations across the municipality. This slide demonstrates that dispersion of functions and lists the locations for various functions within HRP. So we have HRP Central Patrol and Headquarters on Gottingen Street, Criminal Investigations is in Garland Avenue in Dartmouth, Central Division Office on Mumford at the Halifax Shopping Center, East Division Office in Mellor and Dartmouth, West Division Patrol Division and Office is Convoy Run and Bedford. Training and Information Management is at location on Northbrook and 2 Chapman Street in Dartmouth. Integrated Emergency Services in 21 Mount Hope in Dartmouth. Other specialized and community offices are at various locations throughout the municipality. So you can see the functions for HRP are varied and also dispersed across the municipality in different facilities. The 2018 study recognized that HRP required centralized police facilities, and those facilities would have unique needs. Police facilities are specialized and require unique design, capacity, accessibility, and technical and operational considerations. These needs are multiplying as policing evolves and becomes more complex. Just a few examples of those specialized functions and needs are listed on the slide. Forensics labs, stolen and seized property and evidence storage, training in simulation facilities, fingerprinting, various task forces. Oh, thanks, John. Sorry about that. So these are the list I was just referring to in terms of specialized functions that require design and other considerations for policing. So where we are in the process is in 2018, RPL Architects completed a study outlining the high-level space needs and requirements for a new HRP headquarters. Since 2018, HRM population has increased significantly and faster than anticipated, which required an update to this report. The updated study provides a high-level facility distribution scenarios and assesses potential locations within our HRM. The objectives of the original study were to compare 2018 population and staff projections with more current population projections, work with our corporate real estate to identify a list of potential sites for evaluation, which were evaluated using the composite value level of service, CVLOS process, which was adapted to specific needs and requirements from HRP. To define high-level space requirements for future facilities based on projected populations and staffing levels, and then consider various models for facilities and relate that to the available sites. And then lastly, the purpose of the study and the intent is to propose next steps. Representatives on the CVLOS analysis of the sites came from HRP, corporate real estate, planning and development, as well as facility design and construction. The next slide shows some of the need for the updated analysis and report. 2018 population and staffing level predictions and projections are in the lower set of lines, and the 2024 projections are the upper set of lines. So this demonstrates the significantly higher population projections than anticipated. Currently, HRP staffing is 2.9 per 1,000 population, similar to 2018. And total HRP staff planning is maintained for planning purposes at 3.4 per 1,000 population. That number, that ratio, comes from the police to population ratios in Canada study that was 1962 to 2016. That is the basis that RPL uses when designing and identifying space requirements for police facilities. So this slide demonstrates high-level staffing projections based on population projections, and then models the space requirements for HRP HQ facilities or HRP facilities. You can see that the data based on the 2018 report was from 2016, showing 721 staff, where there are 743 today. Current population from 2016 versus today, and then the projections that we can see required significant update based on faster than anticipated growth in population. The intent of designing police headquarters facilities would be to provide not only for today's needs, but for growth and to allow the services to grow. So we have anticipated staff for 15 years and 25 years, and then extrapolate that to the needs in terms of gross area square footage required for police facilities in 15 years and the 25-year space needs. Just to draw your attention to the 280 square foot per person, again, that's a planning number that is used by the architect to determine the amount of space required based on the number of staff projected. And that would include all square footage of the building measured between the exterior walls. It includes mechanical spaces, communication spaces, washrooms, and everything else. It's not just offices or police facilities. The next stage of the analysis was to develop development concepts based on the size of the lot available. And they varied across these three concepts, which were the first one being kind of an open site with a low level 1 or 2 story facility and wide open ground level parking, which would require approximately 13 acres. The second was development concept with up to 3 stories, approximately 10 acres, which would also include below grade parking. And then the third, which would be for more tight and urban sites where there was more density, the facility would be multiple stories with the capacity to grow vertically as the force expands. Potential site identification began with a list of sites provided by corporate real estate. It was approximately 12 locations that were originally looked at, and most of these were fairly quickly dismissed in terms of the size of lot available. The projections for required space were a minimum of 6.5 acres, so that eliminated a number of properties from consideration. There were 4 municipally owned sites that were examined more closely, and then the shortlisting through the CVLOS and scoring resulted in these three locations being selected: Gottingen Street, Cowie Hill, and Burnside Park. First location is Gottingen Street, which it would incorporate not only the existing headquarters facility, but the lands across the street where the Centennial Pool now sits, as well as the temporary housing that is located there. So this location would assume that those lands were available. Functions would that would be relocated to the new headquarters facilities would be those located at Northbrook, those criminal investigations that are located currently at Garland Avenue. The issue with this site is that it would have to be a phased construction. So we would potentially build on Lot B, where we would establish some headquarters facilities as well as Central Patrol Division and prisoner care. Once that construction was complete and those operations moved into that building, we would then vacate Lot A, which is the existing headquarters, and then build the remaining facilities on Lot A. Some of the existing conditions that would present challenges to that location would be the fact that we have an operational pool currently located there. That pool is nearing end of life. It's 58 years old. Although it is operating now at capacity, only 2 years ago, there was a 2-year closure required to do major repairs to the facility. When those repairs were undertaken and completed, and the pool was refilled, there was multiple instances of leaks that required extensive investigation and excavation to correct. So that pool is in operational and good condition today, but as I noted, it's 58 years old and it's approaching end of life. This scenario also assumes that the modular housing units that are currently located behind the Centennial Pool would be also available. The other issue is that there are a number of ongoing HRM initiatives that are underway and under development that have identified that lot, those lands and that location as potentially suitable to those purposes. One being the Downtown Gateway project under development by Planning and Development, and the second is for a competitive and training aquatic center, 50-meter pool that Parks and Rec is currently undertaking a study for. That study is to be going to council in the fall of 2025. And then lastly, there is a planned development on the adjacent lot for the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center. That would impose some architectural restrictions in terms of trying to develop two large developments side by side, so consideration would need to be given to safe pedestrian and vehicular flow through those sites. Second location is Cowie Hill. Under this scenario, several currently dispersed operations could be relocated to a new centralized headquarters, except for Central, East, and West divisions. So Central, East, and West divisions are predominantly patrol divisions, and those are located and required to be dispersed about the municipality. And Central, currently located at 1975 Gottingen, would need to remain somewhere in the downtown core for operational reasons. So that would include not only the patrol division, but prisoner care as well. Investigations could be moved from the lease space at Garland Avenue, and functions at Northbrook would also be relocated to the new headquarters at Cowie Hill. However, under this scenario, a location for Central Patrol Division and prisoner care would need to be found, because in order to use the existing one, we would have to demolish it. So that would also create the level of complexity of finding a temporary location for Central Patrol and prisoner care while that work is ongoing. And this slide is basically the description I just provided. The third location that was considered and is a location in Burnside Park. Under this scenario, several currently dispersed operations could be centralized into a new headquarters, but similar to the Cowie Hill example, Central Division, Patrol Division, and Prisoner Care would have to remain in downtown, which creates the similar issue where we have to demolish and rebuild, and then meanwhile house those functions and operations at a temporary location. The other issue with Burnside is that we would offset that. Although the lands are owned by HRM, we would need to essentially buy those lands from HRM as part of the financial model for operating the Burnside Park. Last slide. The recommendation of the report was that the Board of Police Commissioners of the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend to Regional Council that staff proceed with an in-depth analysis of the 3 potential sites that have been shortlisted as potential sites for the development of the new Halifax Regional Police Headquarters. Secondly, that staff conduct a further, more detailed needs assessment based on our HRP and RCMP service delivery strategies and associated anticipated organizational growth, including a review of HRP programming requirements. So in a nutshell, what that is looking for is a facilities needs assessment to be conducted for HRP facilities, which would be a more detailed deep dive into the functional programming to identify what space is required for all those various specialized functions that I talked about, things like the prisoner care, the forensics, the labs, the material and evidence storage. So to create a functional plan on how much space each of those functions would require, do a building massing study to come up with a conceptual design of what that building would look like and how it would be located, and then to determine a recommendation for the site where the new HRP HQ facilities would be. In terms of next steps proposed and potential timelines, so the next step, as I suggested, would be pre-design and functional planning and building massing, which would take 12 to 14 months. The delivery model for a project this large and complex would probably be, we would recommend that it would be progressive design build. That would require a request for supplier qualifications. It's a 4 months approximately timeline. RFP and award for 8 months and design 18 months. Assuming approval from Regional Council, construction would then be, depending on the model chosen and the site, would be 2 to 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Kent, could you put the recommendation on the floor for discussion as a motion, please?
Yes, thank you. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend to Regional Council that 1, staff proceed with an in-depth analysis of the 3 potential sites that have been shortlisted as potential sites for the development of a new Halifax Regional Police Headquarters And 2, staff conduct a further, more detailed needs assessment based on HRP and RCMP service delivery strategies and anticipated organizational growth, including a review of the future HRP programming requirements. So moved.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mancini.
So yes, I'd like to speak to this.
Please, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the reports. Thank you for the work that's being done. I have been on record as saying this has taken too much time. Everything takes time, but I feel like we've been talking about a need for a headquarters far too long. So I'm pleased to see at least now we're at this point. I see some positives and negatives. Just at some point, I think that I'm not going to tie up everything today with commenting on the different sites, because I think that there's work that needs to be done to bring something forward for us to move, and I'll wait for then. But when we see a motion like this, and that's for us to consider, and I'm just throwing it out there, do we need to break down Halifax Regional Police Headquarters into and additional facilities as needed? Like, you know what I mean? We have a motion that says headquarters, but we already have a system right now where we've got everything spread out. And in order to, when we are considering headquarters, are we good? Is this motion good for covering the whole gamut? Because my question to you is that when we do the in-depth analysis, does that include all the bits and parts that you've presented on today? I just need to confirm that.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
So I would draw your attention, I don't have the report available on the laptop, but I would draw your attention to the report, pages 5 and 6, where various organizational scenarios were presented that include things like headquarters with a central division built
Gotcha.
in, headquarters
I
with
just
a
don't have
central
it in front of
division.
me, so
Yeah.
just want that for the
So there
record.
were a number of scenarios that were explored and that are potentially to be explored further, depending upon, in concert with the needs assessment and functional program.
So I don't know how much time I have left, but I just want to go on the record as being very supportive of this next step. Very supportive I want to be, certainly supportive of any budget allocations for this year when we get into the budgets. The important piece for me, though, as well, and perhaps the CAO can speak to this, is that we're showing the 12 to 14 months. And at 12 to 14 months, is that when we would expect something to come forward to council with something to move the actual project along? Are there other steps? And can you as the CAO offer your insight to your commitment of consistently moving this along? No gaps, no, we don't want to slow down again. I know that's a big ask, but as you can tell, I'm just saying I'm supportive of, and our members need it, and our communities need the force, the police service delivery to be delivered from a state-of-the-art new facility that's ready quick, that comes along more quickly than we've moved this along in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as CAO, of course, I follow the direction of Halifax Regional Council.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, and Halifax Regional Council approved a 4-year capital plan last year with the new facility for the police headquarters within it. This Wednesday, we will have our capital budget debate at council, and you can see our updated multi-year 4-year capital plan. And again, the police facility is within it. And our specific deliverable for this year was to come here with this report to get to the decision on land. So
Yeah.
we are committed to continuing to advance the project and hitting the timelines that we need to hit. But of course, that will depend on timing of getting direction from council and from Board of Police Commissioners on different decision points that we'll have to bring forward. So
Okay,
you've got our commitment to work the plan. There's lots of external forces and things that can happen that will change target dates, but we're committed to getting it done.
okay. Mr. Chair, can you put me down for a round two? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Philip, thanks for the presentation. As always, I look at our chief. Chief, there's no question we need to replace headquarters, without question. And, as Philip's slide showed, HRM is a different place than it was back in 2018 when we first started this process. So again, it confirms that we need a new facility. You showed the 3 possible locations. I think there's a fourth option, in my opinion, that's missing. Those options, for the most part, talked about creating another large facility. I know a previous chief talked about looking at smaller satellite operations throughout the municipality and the possibility of phasing that in. Was that any discussion about looking at that rather than just a main headquarters? I just look at, to be honest, I want to be perfectly honest, Chief, look at you again. We have a lot of competing priorities as a CAO will identify at HRM right now, right? We need more fire stations. We need more rec facilities as our population grows. We have projects that are in the books we're going to be discussing on Wednesday that we still haven't finalized. Things like the Halifax Forum at a pretty big price tag. So there's a lot of competing, projects that we have. I just think we have to be more creative in how we do this. So I'm having conversations with the fire department, and talking about, can we take a fire department and put it in the base of a high rise that's being built? And we've had conversations with developers on that. I know policing is different, but we need to be creative, because my worry is, and the concern that my colleague to my right is, that this is going to be a long time down the path if we go our normal route, because of those competing priorities. So my first question is around that smaller locations. I do have, we need to look at things like a combined training facility. So we have fire going off doing their thing. We need a bigger training facility. The chief already told us in previous meetings that we can only put so many cadets, even though he's got money to hire more. How do we combine it? If we look at our bus drivers need a place for a training facility for vehicles. And so is there another creative way that we can take pieces of what we're trying to do here and combine it with other things that we need? The last project, I think back in 2018, the conversation was $75 million to build a headquarters. I suspect that price tag is probably quite higher. And we haven't gotten there because of the design, but I would suspect it's quite high. So that just makes me concerned even more. How do we get to the point where we start constructing it? And I look at looking at where headquarters is located now, I would suspect we could get a pretty penny for that location if we were to put it in the open market, which would help us offset the costs of building the headquarters. I don't know, Madam CAO, if we were to sell a piece of property like that, and can we direct that the monies from that goes towards a police headquarters? I realize the issue is we need central patrol downtown, and we need the prisoner care downtown. But I think there's how do we do that? Find other locations, sell that property, gives us money. All of a sudden, we've got more money to build, more likely to advance us building this building or variation of this building. So there's lots of me chirping there, Philip. I'm sorry, but I think there's a couple of questions, but I wouldn't mind hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Through you, Chair Giles, to Commissioner Mancini. The architect that we used both in 2018 and for the current study has a lot of experience in designing police facilities as well as other emergency service facilities. The input that we have all the way along through the study from HRP and the architect was that the current dispersed model causes operational inefficiencies, extended time, difficulty for multidisciplinary collaboration on police operations and investigations. So the intent was to have a singular headquarters facility with a separate patrol division potentially located centrally. So those are the three locations. This was what drove the decision towards a more integrated, larger facility.
Philip, sorry to interrupt, I'm running out of time here. Was there any jurisdictional scan done around North America on other police departments and looking at their facilities and ones that were broken up to be more creative rather than just the one? And I understand about efficiency side, but does it exist elsewhere where it is broken up and it is efficient?
That's not my understanding.
Okay.
That it's usually a single integrated headquarters facility with those functions and separate patrol divisions that are located and dispersed throughout the region.
My time's up. I wonder if the CAO could just talk about if we were to go down a path of selling the current site, can that money be dedicated towards an HRP headquarter facility?
So, two things I think I'd like to address. The first was the comment or question regarding a training facility. There is a separate line item in HRM's capital plan regarding a public safety training facility.
Okay, good.
We are very much envisioning that it would be a shared public safety training facility, not a specific fire, not a specific Halifax Regional Police, but
Perfect.
space for everyone. With respect to land, council has control over disposal of assets and where that funding goes, subject to administrative orders guiding that kind of stuff. I will note, though, that we do have also municipal needs for land to consider on the peninsula.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes our best option may not be selling a piece of land or an asset to finance another asset at that point in time.
Okay, I'll come back a second time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So, thank you for the presentation. And yes, definitely we do need a new headquarters, no doubt about it. My question is there going to be any community engagement involvement at some point in time?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Commissioner. That's further down the road than even the next step, but
Mhm.
public consultation for a project of this size would be normal procedure. We would have extensive public engagement.
Thank you. The two sites on Godigan Street, the A and the B that I saw on the display, I am quite concerned, especially when it comes to Centennial Pool. Between myself and Councillor White in District 7, we've had numerous meetings and conversations with residents with regards to that pool and how important it is and how it is very much needed in our community. So I just want to put that out there because you put it out there. Just to put that on record that I would hope that we could go somewhere else other than taking away a vital pool that is in our community. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess we are going into specific sites, but I just need clarity on a comment that my colleague, Commissioner Mancini, said, which is prisoner care needs to be downtown. We have 3 sites. We have the current site and 2 that are not downtown. And what I see when I look at those instantly is traffic. How do our vehicles, our members, move around to get to the areas where they are patrolling or spending their time, particularly in the case of an urgent delivery of service? And that worries me if we continue to keep it in the downtown. The downtown, I just need some clarity on so that prisoner care, does that need to be downtown? Because if it does, that's a big deal. That's a big consideration, I think, for this decision. And the 2 other sites may not have that same kind of congestion when we're looking for the vehicles to move urgently? I'm not sure who should answer that.
To the commission, so what exactly?
It was noted by Tony that prisoner care needs to be downtown.
It had to be at the headquarters now.
Had to be, yeah, well, well, yes, okay, so there, it's not because we have the headquarters downtown, it has to be at the headquarters. But I got the impression from your comment that it had to be considered for downtown, a downtown site had to be considered because prisoner care has to be downtown.
Well, currently, our prisoner care facility is downtown.
Yes,
And part of that is proximity to the courthouse, proximity to where a lot of our activity
okay,
occurs
yeah.
in terms of with the downtown, the level of activity that is involved downtown.
So if your headquarters was not there, but your prisoner care was, is that viable option? I'm just thinking beyond what we've just had presented today.
Yeah, I think, again, there's, a lot of moving parts with that discussion in
Yeah.
terms of, prisoner care kind of doesn't exist just on its own. Like there's a lot of
Yes.
activity that goes along, supervision, a lot of other things that go along with prisoner care. I'm not.
Stop. So, sorry.
I'm not familiar with other places in terms of having external prisoner care facilities apart from.
Okay,
I'm not familiar.
Okay.
I'm not saying it doesn't
Yeah.
exist. Like just in terms from a working perspective in terms of like say activity,
Yeah.
courthouses and level activity downtown involved and all that. Having a prisoner care facility that's close to where a big chunk of our work is in fact, beneficial.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Mancini, round two, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Philip, in your presentation, when you looked at the third site in Burnside, you talked about we would have to buy the land. Can you explain that to me? I don't understand that. It's our land, so just explain that to me.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair Giles, to Commissioner Mancini. I would like to preface this comment or this response with, I'm not an expert in corporate real estate. I refer perhaps to John but okay, the CAO could probably elaborate better than I could.
Thank you. Yeah.
I believe this is as a result of the business case, business park reserve policy approved by council, which is essentially self-funding. So the development costs of land within business parks that we own, development of the street network, the wastewater infrastructure is financed through the land sales. And my recollection, though it's been many years I've looked at it, is even if we take a piece of land within a business park to use for our own municipal purpose, we still have to reimburse the reserve. And I see Executive Director of Property, Fleet, and Environment, John McPherson, is nodding, so I must be right.
Good afternoon, John McPherson, Executive Director of Property, Fleet, and Environment. Yes, that's correct. And I'd just also add that even though Burnside lands are municipal lands, if we used it for HRP facility, then we would be losing the potential revenue from outside businesses that would buy that land. So there's still that, there might not be a net cost to HRM up front, but there's lost revenue from not selling to external people.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And Madam CAO, if we get to that point, I think there's some further conversation we could have and maybe some direction from council on that. It was interesting, I know I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. When we get into design, it'd be nice to see a police headquarters that would have community space in it. As we talk about, develop, trust relationships with our community to be able to have community space in an ideal world. I just plant that seed. So the next steps concern me a little bit. Because I really think we're not being, I repeated myself, we're not being creative enough. in how we're going to get a police headquarters. And I understand the work that's been done, and typically it's one large facility. You know, when we're not clear on the design, we just had a great conversation last week about the Windsor Street Exchange. I'm sure you all heard about it. And we ended up pausing that project right now, and mainly because not only about cost, rising costs, that was a big part of it. And then our partners not raising their amounts to go along with our amounts, but there was different opinions on the design. So that's where we landed. We didn't want the design that was given to us. And I'm concerned here that we're not being creative enough and understanding the design and looking at other options. Because I'm really worried, as I mentioned earlier, we go our normal route, Chief, you'll be retired by the time we even put a shovel in the ground, you know, with for our police headquarters. So we've got to figure out a way to do it faster, keeping in mind of all the other projects that we have in front of us at HRM and as we continue to grow. And now there's always the back of the head, what's happening down in the States and how that's going to impact us, right? And so I just plant that seed creativity when it comes back, and I want to get as much work done as possible so that we have a model that we could advocate for. I'm just
Commissioner,
concerned that on this path that we're not. Yeah,
Commissioner,
thank you.
I was content to let you go over time because there was some question and answer, but the motion relates to future study. You know, there's no darts from the board yet, at least as I understand the speaker's presentation.
And I do want to point out it in the report and all the models, there is no just one building solution. There's one main building
Right.
with different
Understood.
places, and there's reasons for that, I think, in terms of, otherwise we're just kind of building exactly what we're having now in terms
Right.
of police all over the place.
Understood.
I get your point, right?
Yeah.
I think, but I don't want to give the impression that it's just like one, as Robin used to say, one police plaza that where everything exists in, because the reality is just the way we're geographically built.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense to have all the police on one side of the harbor and then something happens to the bridges and you
Right.
can't get there, right? So you
Right.
got to be placed around strategically in terms of different areas. But there is some value, I think, in terms of having a lot of certain services, just from an to have the investigative teams
Sure.
in the same building at the patrol members and, so they can work collaboratively. Because right now, well, I was going to say they're across the harbor. We're on this side of the harbor. So they're over there now in terms of going back and forth, I mean, we make it work. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think, there is a better model.
And Chief, when we're referring to both sides of the harbor, this is the best side of the harbor. Let's just be clear, right?
I find whatever side you happen to be on that time is the best side of the harbor.
Who's the politician here now, Mr. Chair?
I just wanted to, comment to Councillor Mancini. So some people who've been around for a long, long time, like myself, might remember that it took us 20 years to get the Halifax Central Library funded in the books and built. The police department is something we've been talking about for 2 decades. Last year, I believe, was the first year that we actually showed it in the multi-year capital plan that council approved. Getting the long-range funding approval, getting the direction to do this piece of work now, this is the first time that we've seen that level of commitment and movement. So if that gives you any confidence, we're on it, and it's a commitment that we're doing it.
Call the question, please. Oh. Deputy Chair.
Thank you. Just a minor little question here. In the proposed site for Gottingen Street, the whole area is blued out. Is that implying that it's proposing to shut down the end of Gottingen Street and make it all one development site, or am I just misunderstanding the diagram? No, okay. And another observation would be, I've been over to Garland a number of times over the years, and parking is a real challenge. I mean, you need a lot of parking capabilities or infrastructure to support the activities that go on. And so when you look at the 3 sites, don't underestimate the amount of parking required. There's a lot of vehicles coming in, coming out, guests for various reasons, and that's quite problematic, especially if you have it located in the downtown core area. The other caution would be, I just happen to have noticed, these things can get very expensive. I noticed that Peel was putting in a 250,000 square foot new police facility, and it's up to $500 million. So it could be a large number, just to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Oh.
Chair, before we vote on the motion, I just wanted to draw the board's attention to the fact that for clarity in terms of the recommendation to council, that we might need to replace the word "that" after regional council with "direct," so that it's clear that we're directing regional council to request certain actions of staff. I do have some wording for that. Yep.
That's friendly, yes. Call for the question with the amendment noted. All in favor? Thank you. The motion's passed.
What's next?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I just have a very short presentation just to queue up the report that's with you this afternoon. I'll just wait for Andrew to bring. Would you prefer it from here, or are you fine if I sit? Okay. That's fine. Yeah, there's only, if you don't mind advancing when they're ready there, Andrew, fine. Great, thank you, Andrew. Commission, as I mentioned, this is be a short presentation just to queue up the draft responses to the recommendations to the independent review of the August 18th encampment evictions. Andrea, please. Just to set the stage, just a bit of chronology. The actions happened on August 18th, 2021. In May of 2023, after a discussion at the board and at regional council, the independent reviewer was engaged by contract. On August 12th of 2024, the report was released and arrived here at Board of Police Commissioners September of 2024, at which time it was reviewed and the direction was given for staff to go and come back with initial recommendations. And here we are today on February the 3rd of 2025 with that initial report. And I just made a note in there because one of the pieces in that was a follow-up to occur within 6 months after that again. So that's how we arrived here today. Next slide, please. I purposely did not cut and paste 37 recommendations into a PowerPoint to save your eyes. The recommendations and the responses, or at least the draft responses, are there. But across those 37 recommendations, they generally derive into three kind of buckets. One directed to those of yourselves, the Board of Police Commissioners. There is a set of recommendations that are directed towards the Halifax Regional Police. And then there is a set of recommendations that are directed more towards the administrative side of HRM. The themes coming out of those 37 recommendations broadly, this is not an exhaustive list, is really around issues of board oversight. What does the board need to do, referencing to a number of other reports, more than other reports that have occurred in relation to the role of the board. Also recommendations into the issues of policy development and how policy development is created. One of those particular pieces was around the concept of critical point, which comes down to when does the board become involved in discussions, either ahead of the time or after the time in relation to major events. General reporting and general change management. The additional sets of recommendations around police use of force, staff mental health and supports they would receive either before, during, or after an event. the concept of joint operational planning, not just in a policing environment, but also between policing and civilianized response mechanisms, training requirements, and command structures, including movement of information. The recommendations then went on to talk about encampment policy, concepts of how encampments would be managed, role of police, role of civilian communications, how we would deal with closures of encampments, including contacting those that are sleeping rough in those encampments and the supports provided to them. And the final theme was around whether or not there should be an apology provided to those that may have been traumatized as a result of the actions of the 18th. Next slide, please. As mentioned, a working group made up of members of the Halifax Regional Police, the Board of Police Commissioners Policy, lead, the RCMP, and HRM staff work collaboratively across all of the responses. Rather than cutting these into 3 pieces and going away, we thought a collaborative approach of having the pieces in. So when you're looking at the 37 responses, all parties listed there have had a chance to have input across those, and there seemed to be some alignment around where we're going. My belief is that as of today, this is for the board's review. This is the initial cut of responses based on staff to have the board's feedback. And I would say any feedback received from the Board of Police Commissioners would be incorporated into that, and then those would be then forwarded on to Regional Council for review. And then once I would suspect Regional Council does what they are going to do, we will return that final version of that report and action plan back here for the Police Commission and Council, because some of those action items will be 100% in the purview of the board as things go forward. So what we'll hopefully do from this is get some direction in relation to, are we moving in the right direction? We'll move it to Regional Council, and then based on there, the more detailed planning can occur. With that, I'll then defer to any questions specific. I would mention that the staff, many of the key staff that were responsible for the creation of the recommendations are here today. So you have the authors at your disposal if you have questions.
Commissioners, could I ask a commissioner to put the motion on the floor, please?
I have a question for clarification on the motion first. I just need to understand before we go forward with this motion. You referenced that what we have to offer today could be infused into the report. We're being asked to refer this staff report to Regional Council. So I'm not sure how that works. Could it be an amended report?
Mr. Chair, through your council, I'll certainly defer to on the process, but I would think that the board, if the board felt strongly that they didn't agree that this moved forward, or they wanted to have a different motion or some other direction,
Yeah.
that would be well within your purview
Yeah,
to do
that's-
so.
What was the previous motion to this? Do you have a previous motion to this?
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't have it in front of me. I would have thought it would have been already in there, right?
I think it's in the presentation. So I'm just
Mr.
gonna
Chair,
open it
I
up
want
now.
to acknowledge that I'm not losing my 5 minutes on
Hands
this
up.
clarification question. Oh. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, just making sure. if we approve that we're referring a report to Halifax Regional Council, the report that we saw would not have, we may not have been included or comments on the public today. And Bill had suggested that we go into the report. Just trying to figure out, would we, on this motion report, it gets, created, would it refer to an amended staff report?
Well, my recollection of when this event, the chair can correct me if I'm wrong, was there was sort of a three-pronged thing when the board decided what would they do with this report, right? First, they were looking to the police, right, to produce, because the recommendations targeted different areas, right? And some were boards, which were fairly limited, and the report went, you know, took a very broad brush when it looked at this, even though the original mandate was, some people felt it took a very broad approach to the original mandate and included procedural issues with respect to the regional police, and also some administrative issues that might involve the administration. And so the board took a three-pronged approach to that. It felt it wasn't in a position to really comment on the recommendations that pertain to the police or the recommendations that pertain to the administration. And so what it decided to do in the motion there was refer the recommendations with respect to the police and ask the police for a report, and was also looking to refer the recommendations with respect to administration to the administration. And then thirdly, it set up a working group on its own. And if I recall correctly, the idea was to wait the outcome of those two other, Commissioner Kent was the chair then, was to wait the outcome of those two reports, and then the board would see to what extent it would be involved in enacting its own changes. Is that?
I think
If I
we've
could
gone
clear.
too deep. It's my question really isn't about that.
Okay.
It's about, we have a report now, and we would debate that report, right? Sorry, my question is, we have a report now that was presented to us, and we have a motion that we can refer that to council. It was then suggested, not then, but it was also suggested by Bill that if we have comments that he thinks that should be included in that report, they could be infused in it. But, so is that?
That's
Are we-
pretty straightforward
There's, yeah.
through Mr.
No,
Mr.
there's,
Chair.
So it's.
there's no
it's-
problem.
there's
There's no
no-
problem
That's
with
what I wanted to
doing
know.
that.
Is that a
Adding-
problem at all?
No, there's no problem
Okay.
adding the police
That's all
and
I was
board's
wondering.
input to the report going forward.
Yes, okay, good. That's all I needed.
So that having been clarified, do we have a commissioner who's prepared to put the motion on the table,
Yes, I
please?
will.
Commissioner Kent, could you please read the motion for the purposes of the
I
record?
will. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for Halifax Regional Municipality refer the staff report dated December 11th, 2024 to Halifax Regional Council for council's information. Thank you.
Is there a seconder, please? Commissioner
Okay.
Hinch. Are there questions or comments for the speaker, please?
I'm just really glad to see that it has come forward. We have a responsibility, of course, to continue to look very closely at the processes and the recommendations that have come forward. And I think that for council to have this information certainly relevant in relation to the way council approaches things. So we have work to do yet as a board on this, but I'm sure council will have information to share as well from that perspective on their report. So I'm in favor of it moving forward. Thank you.
Any other commentators? Commissioner Mancini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Bill. I wasn't on the Board of Police Commission when the direction was given for this report, but I was here on August 18th. And August 18th was a very sad day for this municipality. And when I hear about the request that's coming out of this report for an apology, and I can't speak for the board, but I can speak for myself as a commissioner, if there's an apology going to be given, let's talk about the groups that were involved in the mistakes. HRM made some mistakes. CAO at the time made some mistakes. The province of Nova Scotia made some mistakes. The HRP made some mistakes. The residents of HRM made some mistakes. The leader of the provincial opposition at the time made a huge mistake. So, you know, if any apology is going to be given, let's make sure we round everybody up to line up for that apology, in my opinion. Body worn cameras, as we're progressing with it, and we're having a presentation shortly from RCMP, can't tell me that body worn cameras wouldn't have been helpful on August 18th. Would have been extremely helpful for our discussion today. Really glad to see, you know, one of the recommendations is the as you alluded to, Bill, the critical point. The Board of Police Commission needs to be involved in these types of events. You know, whether it's before the event is going to happen, some conversation with whoever the chair is at the time, and then a debrief of that event with the Board of Police Commission. I mean, there was no involvement, from my understanding, even though I wasn't on the board at the time. Lots of work has already been done too. And Bill, so here's my question. Is there any, is it possible to get a comparison list of the work since August, action that's been done since August 18, and a list of what has been done, and compare that to the list of 37 recommendations? Because I suspect we can cross off some of those 37 recommendations. So I'm wondering, you know, if we have a number or even what those are. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through to the Commissioner, I don't have the exact side by side, but what I could say, even from the report, from the independent report did identify that HRM had changed their direction and their processes. What I would say is that you are correct. I would, in my opinion, a lot of what was recommended was already part of our response mechanism. So there was an alignment, if you will. And I think that alignment has actually been has been tested in the fact that we have actually been involved with 3 encampment closures in which we followed a civilian-led approach, using the communication models as was noted here, working with our partners and service providers, and now has there been issues? There's been some issues, yes, but the general feel, I would say, of what the independent review has suggested is mirrored in where HRM is, and also by what we've been doing in the last little while. So, but I can certainly go through and say, yes, we're already doing that. Yes, we're doing that. And some of that is picked up in the responses that is already in our response, but there's always room for more work on those. We can always get better.
And just for the benefit of my commissioners around the table, the non-elected ones, you know, August 18th was you know, the whole homeless crisis that we're under right now was relatively new to this municipality. I mean, we had people living rough and living homeless, but not to the numbers that existed then and now. And so we had no expertise on this whole homeless file whatsoever. Staff are doing it off the side of their desks. The mandate and responsibility is the province of Nova Scotia, and at the time they weren't doing anything. So we were trying to do it. So mistakes happened. And so, again, I go back to my opening comment about apologies. I'll be interested to see what the recommendation comes from there. Thank you for your time, Bill. Appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. I just had a question. I'm not sure who to direct it to, but the report that was given here, which is the response document, kind of the interim update, on page 4, there's a paragraph at the end around just above next steps. And it talks about the idea that discussions are ongoing as to whether a separate Board of Police Commissioners policy on use of force is still required. I'm just wanting to understand the thinking behind that statement. I would think that we would still want and intend to create a use of force policy by the board. So I'd just like to understand why, who are undergoing those discussions as to whether it's still required or not.
So maybe, Mr. Chair, if you will, I'll start, and then maybe I don't know, did you want to talk? Sure. Yeah. The question came up in relation to the the province of Nova Scotia has new policing standards that will be responsible, that all police agencies, including the RCMP municipal agencies, will have to follow those new standards. So the question came up was, if there is a provincial standard that every police agency in the province needs to come up to, does it still make sense for each board to have a separate policy or in relation? That was really the question mark. It's not a decision to say no or whatever, but it was just in that world, and that first cut at the policing standards will be coming up, I think, by the September of this year. So that's where that, and Josh, do you have anything else on that?
Nothing really to add, just that the policing standards, provincial policing standards were released following this report and also following the board asking for board policy on use of force. So the things have changed a little bit since then. And so that's what discussions are ongoing.
Thank you.
Inspector Mitchell, I think I promoted you the last time around. And Ms. Smith, Program Manager.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce, through you, Chair, I'd like to introduce a couple of colleagues from our divisional headquarters at 80 Garland Avenue. Miss Jamie Smith is going to be the speaker today, and she's the project coordinator for the body-worn camera project rollout across Nova Scotia. She has a team that she manages from headquarters, and supporting her today is the officer in charge of the IMIT, Information Management, Information Technology section, Miss Amanda Feener in the back. Thank you for coming, and I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Great. Thanks to everyone for having me, and thanks to the chair and the board members for inviting me to provide you an update. So today I'll provide you an update of where we're at. This is my second time attending and briefing you, so I'm happy to be back. My name is Jamie Smith. As Inspector Mitchell mentioned, I am the program manager. I've been in the role since July 2022, and previous to that, I worked in Versadex, the RMS system used by the police and HRM. So I'm happy within this role to be able to collaborate with HRP again. So right now where we're at, the field test was successful. I'm happy to report it's been a year now that we started with the field test with Axon Public Safety Canada. National deployment began in November 18th. In the fall, so that's the rest of the country was onboarded. I should back up and say Nova Scotia was part of the field test, so was Alberta. They had 3 detachments. We had 7 detachments in Nova Scotia that were part of the field test. That included 3 general duty detachments and 4 traffic services. So after it was proved successful, there's a phased-in approach that was deployed across Canada. So currently we're in phase 3 in Nova Scotia. This is our final phase of deployment, I'm happy to state. Right now I have teams in Antigonish, 2 coordinators out there rolling out training to our members. The week after that, we're going to be in Guysborough, and then we're going to, weather cooperating, hopefully, we'll be in Cape Breton the end of February. And then we're going to move into finish off the rest of the detachments in Halifax Regional Detachment. So that'll include the larger detachments, Cole Harbour, Lower Sackville, and Tantallon. So within HRM, we do have body-worn cameras deployed to our members in Sheet Harbour, North Central, which is the Middle Musquodoboit Detachment, Musquodoboit Harbour, and as well in our Community Action Response Team out of the Cole Harbour Detachment. And Preston was just onboarded 2 weeks ago. So a few things about the contract, and because this is a national project, details of the contract can be obtained if interested by other police agencies or the Crown. They can take advantage or other government departments. We've developed the policy, training procedures, facility and security requirements have been developed. And as we've deployed and we recognize there are issues, we're reassessing things as we develop and roll through deployment. Very positive project so far. A lot of the feedback from our members, it's not like any other project I've worked on before. They want this training. My previous role was training. I've never seen any member want to have this type of training, like they have body worn cameras. So I'm happy to share that with you. We continue to remain engaged with our stakeholders throughout deployment. So our stakeholders include HRP. We've done a demonstration for them. We just did a lunch and learn a few weeks ago. And as we onboard, I spoke about onboarding Cole Harbour, Lower Sackville, and Tantallon Detachment. Our workflow and the e-disclosure process, we're working with our partners in policing and HRP to make sure what we're deploying on the RCMP side is going to work for them, especially since we're in that integrated court environment. So it's been a great project for me to be a part of again with them. Our other stakeholders include, it could be this Friday, for example, I'm presenting to the IWK. We've presented in the community sessions as well. In Preston, I'm going to be in Musquodoboit Harbor, Sheet Harbor communities, presenting in local engagement sessions. I was to a police board in West Hand, so ongoing community engagement. I can say as far as the communities are concerned, a lot of their concern is compliance from the members. What does it look like? Just because we're onboarding body-worn cameras, are they going to use it? That's one of the main concerns. So I've done a look at the stats to see, I've engaged our supervisors to look at what does that look like moving forward. And I'm happy to report so far from our initial look at compliance, they're using it for all the calls. Anything that we've got, any requests we've had for footage, the members have been using the camera. It's still, I have a camera here with me. It's still a manual process, so I'll get into how they turn it off and on. So part of it is still they have to remember to turn it on. It's another tool they have to get used to using. I mean, and there's so many things they have to do when they get out of that car, but it hasn't taken them as long as what I thought for them to get used to it. So very positive on that front. And as the RCMP as a whole, we're working on continued improvements in alignment with the RCMP's digital strategy. So that's just ongoing efficiencies. Some of that is also in collaboration with the Crown. So what sort of efficiencies can we make on our team to do redactions, e-disclosure, what that looks like. And also, it's not just body-worn video that we've put out. When we started our deployment in November, we also introduced to all our members the ability from the work side of their phone to be able to take photos, additional videos. So for example, if they're on a scene of a fatal collision or a significant event that occurred, it's not just using their body-worn video. They can use on the work side of their phone the Capture app, and they could take a video of the event. They could also use the audio statement function from their Capture app. And upload all this evidence. We also, when we're training our members, we get them to use the community request. That's proven invaluable to the members and so efficient. So this allows the member to send out a link to members of the community, either through email or by text or phone, that provides them a link. They can upload photos from a case or evidence. It could be from dash cam footage, and it goes directly into the DEMS, which is the digital evidence management system that we're using in the RCMP. So it's not just the body-worn video that we've rolled out. So a few things about the body-worn camera, and again, I have one here. It is hooked up to a development environment, so it's not to our production environment, and it's not recording now. So for everyone out there, if it's flashing green, you'll see our members use it now. That means it's not recording. They have to double press it, and it'll turn red, and that's the indicator that they're recording. It's also it gives them haptic feedback, and it reminds them that they are recording. It does have the capability to go into like a stealth or a covert mode if the members are involved in a situation where they cannot be lit up. So they can do that just by pressing the volume down button so that they don't get the haptic feedback and they're not lit up. But when they're in the course of their duties, they are to have the lights on and have that haptic feedback for their own memory. So members are only, I guess if one thing about this as well, as members get started, it's just getting used to, as soon as they get out of the car, they have to double press. Some of what we've been doing for our training is seatbelt off, camera on. So they're not recording 24/7. So it's important for you to realize that. A few things about the digital evidence management system is members are only able to view their own video. So it's not all the members can't view each other's video. And we've gone with the least permission access in the digital evidence management system. So supervisors can view their videos, I can view the videos, and my coordinators can also use the videos. But there's a detailed audit trail in the system that's required to be there. And also for the members viewing, and that's a significant part of their training. I think one of the things in community engagement as well, when we think of body worn video, oftentimes we've all seen videos online of down in the States and how they share the body worn footage. That's not what it's going to look like here, but we see this all the time. So I think people in the community, they tend to think of this as media. This is not what it's going to be. All the evidence that's collected, the body worn video footage, it's not like you and I taking pictures on our camera, sharing it, photos, and how easily we can do this. It's going to be in the secure environment and it's uploaded. So the digital evidence management system is just that. And when we're out there training members, we're really telling them, and I'd like the members of the community to understand that as well. It's not just like sharing photos. This is evidence. So however they treat a knife on scene, for example, that's how this evidence is going to be treated. All the audit trails and the continuity of evidence is going to be the same for this digital evidence management as it would be for anything else. A few of the key policy pieces is once a member's issued a body-worn camera, they're expected to record and use it when they're attending calls. So part of that training is online training, and then which is part of the policy piece on the RCMP side, and then they have to do some Axon training online as well. Once they've done the online training, we attend the detachments and we do their in-person training sessions. It's from 4 to 4.5 hours. And it's after that time that they're issued their camera, and then they start to use it as soon as they're issued it. And I've seen members, I handed them over a camera last week in Yarmouth, and then they were using it right away. And we're out making sure they had all their cameras on. Oh, sure, that would be lovely. Again, it's hooked up to a dev environment. It's a double press if you'd like to turn it on, and a single press to turn it off. Recording is not permitted in areas where there's a high expectation of privacy, such as washrooms, hospitals, treatment centers, but there are exemptions under exigent circumstances. So we have seen recordings in hospitals. The policy is written in a plain language. It's easy for the public to understand. And part of our ongoing stakeholder engagement is putting posters out and giving wallet cards to the public, which I think has been very helpful. The wallet cards contain a QR code that has a link that members of the public can scan, and it brings them to that policy. The policy also states that body-worn cameras cannot be used for surveillance purposes. So that means the members are only using the cameras when they attend a call or for an investigative purpose. They can't be just traveling around with them. So, traveling around and having it on when they're not on a call. So it's not going to be used for surveillance or picking up information when they're in a public setting. So that's important for the public to understand as well. They're only going to be activated when necessary and according to policy. And one last thing I'd like to add before I get questions. I believe it was Commissioner Mancini that mentioned about the members' wellness. And one piece we've added to our training that I think I'm so happy to hear you say that, because it's one thing that's overlooked. And even from the onset of the project with body-worn cameras, it wasn't something that had initially been thought of, but it's certainly something we'll share along with our training slides to HRP. But as members attend calls, they go home at the end of the night. Previous to this project, they didn't have to look at the body-worn footage before. Now part of their role is reviewing that footage, going through the disclosure process. And not just that, the photos they're taking, and they've taken photos on scene before, but this is a significant piece to their wellness. So it's something that's important to me. I'm looking after the team of my wellness, but I just really appreciate the fact that you brought that up, and it's really important to me as well. And that's it really for the highlights reel overview.
Thank you so much. I'm sure the commissioners will have some questions. And before they do, I have one.
Sure.
The officer alights from her vehicle and immediately turns on her camera. That's the protocol. She will not know at that moment or at that time if there's going to be any need to archive the material for later use. How does that audit facility work in those circumstances? Is there a time when the data will be expunged from the system automatically? Is that something that she has to do when she realizes that the data is not going to be required for any purpose in the future? How will that work?
That's a great question. And retention and purging is always something, or typically is something that's overlooked. I can say it's been a concern from the beginning, the onset of the project. So our members, they have the ability to tag in the digital evidence management system, the video or the evidence that they're uploading. If it comes from their phone, the expectation is that they tag it with the same ID number. That's the occurrence number that matches their police file number. So all the police files that we have, so in HRM, it would be the Versadex system that's used, they already have a retention in place. So the idea is we'll have an auto tagging feature that will speak to the CAD system, which tells them what time they're dispatched to a call. It looks for that information, and it will be able to auto tag all the evidence in the digital evidence management system. So the occurrence type in the RMS system, once that information is due to be purged from the police file, it should match the date in the DEMS. So it's not, for now, because we don't have it turned on the HRM side, we are asking them to tag it, but nothing will be deleted. We do have, it's a 2-year period. If, for example, an officer turned on their camera and it was a mistaken, but nothing was, there's nothing of evidence, it wasn't an interaction for an investigative purpose, that will be removed from the system. They won't add an ID. It'll be purged in 2 years. Does that answer your question about the IDs?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioners, questions for the speaker? Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I'm really glad to hear that you're involving HRP in this. So as we know, we're going down this path too. So fantastic, you're already doing that. Interesting, you talked about the feedback from the community sessions. One of my questions was, have you heard from the community? You've already done that, but their big concern is compliance from members, right? So it's policy when it comes to tools like this, right? So my question is that, in response to that, we talked about the report that Bill Moore talked about earlier, August 18th. The other report that's in front of us that we've been dealing with is defund the police. And that report says no cameras. But it's policy, that's critical. Part of the policy, and I know they're going through a learning curve, but if an officer leaves their vehicle, attends a call, and for whatever reason forgets to put the camera on, how do you deal with that? If that officer should have had the camera on, and particularly in that incident, it would have been valuable to have that camera on, and he or she doesn't do that, how does the policy address that?
I mean, we've shown in the beginning, we looked at compliance. So, I mean, it would depend on the situation. Has this member been using their camera consistently?
Mhm.
What does it look like? Is this a one-off situation? And it would be something that would have to go to their supervisor. It is a manual process. So,
Mhm.
a lot of it is training too. What I recommend is if you're going to a call for service, turn on your camera before. If you know it's a significant event, there's so many things you have to do when you're attending. Even something, for example, is putting your car in park. Once you get there, it can be problematic at times.
Right.
They have so many things they have to do once they arrive on scene. So we're advising them to turn it on prior, but like you're saying, it's not going to catch it every time. So it would be something that would have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And it's something that the supervisor, so I have monthly supervisor sessions where we talk about what does it look like as far as compliance? How can they check with audits? So if someone was consistently not using their camera, they would engage myself and my team, but it would be a compliance issue for them to look at, for their supervisor to look at.
You also mentioned that you never saw members want training and wanted a tool as much as body-worn cameras.
Right.
Why do you think your members want it so much?
I think for their own protection. They've looked at, one, I can see it de-escalates. Not in every situation, but when people see the camera, you can see a change. And when the member says, just so you know, I'm recording, some people say, so am I. And it doesn't help with every situation, but I can say significant. And the feedback we've been getting from members who've been using it for almost a year now is they really see a change in people. Yeah, and for their own protection, there have been many members who've, complaints have happened. What does that look like? They could be off work for a significant period. They'd have this backup right away.
During the field test, has the footage been used in court or internal reviews?
We have been submitting disclosure with the Crown, and we're working on that process. What does it look like? But it has been submitted because we've been using the cameras since February.
And last question, or last two questions, do RCMP have cameras in the cars?
Most of them do. There
Okay.
are some, not every single car, but they do. It's not. It's a different system, though. It's
Right.
not with this. But when I speak of the enhancements we'd like to make, one of them that they're looking at the national level is Axon Fleet. What will that look like? Could we get everything in this one digital evidence management system? And that's my goal. I'd like to have
Yeah.
it all in one DEMS. It'll save the members so much time.
And I'm looking at our chief, we don't have cameras in our cars yet, but, having that one system for both makes perfect sense. Last question, I promise, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if we know this yet, Chief, is it the same brand that we're looking at, or are we not there yet? Same brand. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That was a great update. I don't want to get too technical, but I'd love to have my curiosity satisfied. So I'll ask you a couple of simple ones. In terms of the policies, though, these are personalized, right? They're issued to each individual officer member.
They are.
Right.
I should say personal issue, but it's per detachment. So it's actually the position. So if they go to a different detachment, they will get a camera from that detachment.
And so when they end their shift, where does the device get stored at the end of shift?
They're expected to dock it in the docking station. That's because it is protected B equipment. So
Right.
it is in their police equipment room. Now, across Nova Scotia, we have many different detachments. So they all look a bit different. If they don't have a police equipment room, it has to be in a cabinet that's locked and secured.
Okay, so they're not taking this home with them and then bringing it to work the next day.
Right, in most cases. So there could be a case where if they have to work an on-call shift that they would have that, but it has to
Right.
be secured the same as their other equipment that's protected B and what that would look like. And they could charge it at home. The only place the information gets uploaded though is from that docking station. That's where it uploads. Charging it
Right.
doesn't upload that information and it goes right from that dock, which is in our secured room, up to the cloud.
And does that mean that the data that has been captured on the device is encrypted while it's sitting at rest?
That's right.
Okay. And then the other question I had back in I think it was a June presentation, maybe July, that you had given.
Right.
I'd asked a question about what sort of information sharing will occur with your municipal partners. And at that point, I think you had said that you were working with the vendor, given that this was a cloud-based solution, and whether if there was multiple officers from different forces responding and sharing evidence, that information could be shared. Did you get that worked out with the vendor? Is that going to be the model, that there will be sharing from the DEM system itself between the
There-
partners?
There will be, yeah. And I've already seen it in other divisions. So we're working on what it looks like here, but it's so easy. My team's responsible to go build a case for the members, and we could share an entire case. And that's the same way with the Crown. We're looking to see how is electronic disclosure going to look for Nova Scotia, what is it going to look like for us? If we can get onboarded, our Crown with Justice, we've shared all that information to see if we could get electronic across the board. So we don't have any police agencies onboarded right now in Nova Scotia, other police agencies. But once we add them to the system, for example, Kentville Police Service, they have Axon. We can share right within the DEMS. But if there's another agency we need to share with, we could share just by entering their email address, and they could create an account, and then they could burn it off to a DVD or download it into
Right.
whatever system they use. We can do that process currently. So the ability to share electronically is there, and we're really close to have it fully electronic.
That's great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hinch, please.
You pretty much already answered my question about with regards to when an officer is going up to into a situation, and they allow they let that person know that the camera is active and on. is it also possible to, I don't know if it could be done or not, but not just letting them know that it's active and on, but what that looks like? So you just showed us how it works. Can they show that person how it works as well with regards to, so that they know it's actually working? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's actually working and it's doing what it's supposed to do. So they may say it's on and working, it could be green instead of red. So is it possible to, explain more when somebody's in that situation at that time?
Absolutely. If the lights aren't enough or the community engagement to say that, or if someone's thinking, did you
So
really
I may
record?"
not, yeah, because I may not know what it is. I may not know. I'm just
Sure.
assuming I see green, that means go to me. Whereas it's red means stop.
Yeah,
That-
and it's possible that they didn't hear something on the news or they're not sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great question, and it actually speaks to our Axon View app. So if it was practical, I can't say what the member would do in that situation, but if they felt that, there was some hesitation, it would be possible for them to show them on their work phone that what the app is.
Mhm.
They could turn it off briefly and turn it back on, and then they could show them the video on their phone.
Okay.
They could show them that it exists and that it did record on their phone, or they could show them a bit about policy. They could give them the QR code. Now, the policy, it does explain how to turn it on, a bit about the camera,
Right.
but I guess it wouldn't get into the specifics of the colors.
Mhm.
Yeah, but there's also a link that's attached to the QR code, so they could find more information there as well.
Mhm.
But they do have that ability to show them and just explain, this is what it looks like, and I turned it on at that time, but it does exist. Whether a member would do that, it would be depending on the scenario, and I wouldn't advise them to turn it off, for too long. I would get them to talk out loud if that's what they chose to do at that time. That they're able to do that.
I just feel that would de-escalate the situation a lot more quicker, to know the practice of how it's being used and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Because I have received a lot of emails and things like that of no body-worn cameras, this, that, and the other thing. But I think we need to be more transparent about what's actually happening within those different scenarios. My other question was the data. How once it's being charged on the docket and things like that, the data is being uploaded. So after that point, is the camera, once it goes back out into on duty again, is it blank of everything else that happened the night before?
Right. So it uploads. It's there now. So it uploads, and it depends on the bandwidth of the detachment, how fast the videos get uploaded. So say, for example, if there are 10 videos, it depends on the bandwidth, but it'll show on the top of the camera how much time is left, the bandwidth, and how many videos were uploaded. So if the member ended their shift and they docked their camera, then it'll be done by the time they start their next shift. Now, if they're halfway through the shift and they dock their camera and then say there were still 2 videos that needed to be uploaded, they could grab that camera. It would still have those videos on it, and they could keep using it. If it interrupts a video being uploaded, that's fine. They can redock it later, and it'll upload when it continues. And it does hold 60 hours of footage on it. So, and they don't get, it's typically a few files a day or a few instances so they're not recording their entire shift.
Right.
So that's quite a bit of time, especially when they're expected to dock it every evening. Did that answer?
That
question?
did answer my question. I mean, 60 hours is a lot, though.
It
I'm
is.
just wondering, things may get missed in that instance. So when they are uploading that, you said there's a number that goes along with it, or
Right. There's a number. So if they have 10 videos on that camera,
Right.
it will tell them it's uploaded 1 of 10 videos, 2 of 10 videos, until
but with
they're
the
complete.
report. So the report of that incident, is there a report number with that video?
There is. So the member has to add it. They have to add it to the digital evidence management system, or once we get the auto tagging turned on in HRM, it'll automatically generate. to have that number. And that number will match the police file number that's in the records management system that they use. That's what we're using
Okay.
to keep it simple. So,
Okay.
and that way the retention will match. The video evidence should match the police file so that we keep it for the same time.
Awesome.
But there's still some work to be done on that side.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, second time through, anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilors, Commissioners, the next item is number 12. It relates to a security matter, and it relates to legal relationships between the police commissioner, between the police department and third parties. Thank you. Seconder? Seconder for Commissioner Mancini's motion. Commissioner Kent, thank you. Call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Motion's carried. We'll move into in-camera, but we'll take a recess before that.
Just to, ethics report remain confidential.
I think every agenda should also have a 10-minute thing for technical glitches, right? Technical glitches.
Call the meeting back to order. Is there a motion arising out of the in-camera session?
Yes, Chair. I'm just going to share it on the screen. Okay.
The motion reads that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality direct that the private and confidential report dated January 14th, 2025 be maintained private and confidential. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Commissioner. Seconder. Thank you, Commissioner Hinch. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next meeting, March 3rd of 2025. Move for an adjournment. Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the people online.